London is an expensive city, and going to theatre is often considered an expensive activity. But what if I told you that I managed to see 53 shows in the last year for the average price of the ticket of £37, which isn't that expensive? So in this video, I'm going to break down all tips and tricks that I've learned over the years of how to secure cheap tickets in London. One of the most important things when it comes to securing cheap tickets is flexibility. So firstly, we're going to talk about on-the-day tickets and all different ways which you can use to secure these types of tickets. But if you're interested in booking cheap theater tickets in advance, then stick around because in the second part of this video, I'm going to talk about different ways to do this. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Christina and I'm here to help you have the best London theater experience. If you like the sound of it, then make sure to subscribe. So let's start with the best first. In my experience, rush tickets are the best value for money that you can secure in London. These are the tickets available through TodayTix, and this is not a sponsored video, but I genuinely have managed to secure really good seats that were up to £30 with this method. Basically, I've seen Mean Girls, I've seen The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Stranger Things, all of these different shows for under £30, and I've had really good seats in stalls which I really enjoyed. So I would say that this is definitely worth trying, but there are a few caveats when it comes to this method. Basically, you need to have TodayTix account, so this is the only way to access it. The second thing is also that not all shows are available for rush tickets. They need to be listed on their rush and lottery tickets section. That's the way that you can figure out which shows are eligible for this discount. And also the third thing is that you can only book up to 2 tickets. The fourth thing is that also you might not get these tickets. A lot of people try a few days in a row, and I personally have tried for various shows and I haven't managed to get them. So it is a very much a matter of luck if you manage to secure these tickets or not. But if you manage to secure them, you are very likely to have a really good seat in the house for a fairly cheap price. To increase your chances of getting rush tickets, I would say that at 10 a.m, even though if you try and then basically they say that all rush tickets are allocated, keep trying and come back maybe 5 minutes later, because a lot of people put them in the basket and then they actually don't go through with their order. And the second thing to know is that also it's good to apply for one ticket, because a lot of the times you have one seat dotted around and these tickets are not likely to be sold out because a lot of people want to book 2 because they want to go with someone. So I would say if you even want to go with someone, both of you can try for like a single ticket, and then you might not be seated together, but then at the same time you will be able to go to the theater together for a really reasonable price. These are some ways that I used to secure rush tickets in the past, but the best way to see which shows are eligible, you just need to go into TodayTix app and then go to rush and lottery section, and then you'll be able to see shows which you might apply for. Another great way to secure tickets is through lotteries, which are run by specific productions. Again, these are not available for every single production, but if a production that you want to see has this option, then I definitely recommend you trying for it. There is a very famous lottery for Hamilton where you can get tickets for £10, and this is the same in New York for $10. There are a few different shows which are trying to really make theater as accessible as possible. I know the Matilda is running lottery, Cabaret is running lottery, Phantom is having daily seats. So these are a little bit more sporadic and sometimes really specific to the production. So you will need to dig a little bit deeper to find information about it, unless they are already listed on TodayTix, which is also another useful thing about this app, is that within rush tickets section, you also have rush and lottery, and then they list all basically on the day tickets which you can apply for this way. A lot of the times for lottery tickets, you are applying for tickets or for the ballot for the following week. So that's something to bear in mind, because it's not necessarily on the day ticket that you can get, but it's worth basically browsing on TodayTix to see which productions are doing lotteries in partnership with them. And then also if you have a specific show that you want to see, so for example Matilda, they do have it on their website rather than necessarily on TodayTix app. So maybe just Google the name of the show and then plus lottery plus London, and then you will be able to basically see if that show is running lottery. And it's especially worth trying for some more expensive shows like Cabaret, where maybe the cheapest ticket is £60, and even Hamilton, where like the cheapest good seats are probably £60 upwards. Some other lotteries that I haven't mentioned are Disney Monday seats, which you can get every Monday at noon for Disney shows in London. And also Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is running Friday 40, where every Friday you can get tickets that are £20 per part, and this play has 2 parts. So there are quite a few shows in London that are offering these reduced tickets, so it's just about finding out when they might be having these lottery tickets and then trying for them. And ultimately the downside of these types of tickets is that it does boil down to luck if you're selected or not, if you manage to get there on time or not, but it is worth trying, especially if you're coming to London and wanting to see a show on a budget. On a similar note, the third method worth bearing in mind is that sometimes Western productions have a specific day when they release release extra tickets at a cheaper price. I remember when it was Romeo and Juliet, I think it was basically Wednesday when they would release £25 or £30 ticket, and then you just need to be on the website at 10 a.m. for example, and then basically you can access these tickets. Obviously there's always a high demand for these tickets, so you're not guaranteed to be able to get it, but they might have every week a specific day when they are releasing these tickets. For Macbeth, for example, they had every day standing tickets which they would release at 10 a.m. and then they would be £20, and this is how I managed to go and see this amazing production with David Tennant. So it is just important to know which production you're trying to get these cheap tickets for, and then explore as much as possible around it. Or sometimes even it's really good to call box office and ask them if they have any offers that basically you might not be aware of. But I think the official production website is probably always the best place to start, and then the next best thing is to call box office to ask about these special deals. Also, for example, the National Theatre has their Friday rush where they release basically tickets at noon for all of their productions for the following week. So this is another thing to explore, and it is very specific to different theaters. So that's why I'm saying basically if you're interested in a specific production, try and research as much about the production, about the theater, and try their websites to find out if there are any types of discounted tickets being released. The method number 4 is to go on TKTS official London Theatre website and then check on the day tickets. This is basically where they sell on the day tickets for the shows which haven't sold out, and sometimes you can find cheap tickets like 50% discount, 40% discount, but sometimes these are also not necessarily much cheaper. So I don't think that this is maybe the best value for money, but sometimes you can find some really good shows, and this is particularly good if you're not necessarily set on a specific show but you just want to go see a show and you want to find the best deal. Then in the morning at like 7 or 8 a.m. go to the website and then see which shows are on offer that day and what is the best deal that you can find. In most cases you will be able to find tickets for under £35 depending on the show. TKTS also has a booth, like a physical place where you can go to on Leicester Square, and I believe it opens around like 10 a.m. so you can actually speak to someone. But if you want to do it from the comfort of your own, you can access the same deals basically on the website. The fifth method for securing cheap tickets when it comes to on-the-day tickets is to try and go or call box office. This is a very old method of securing return tickets and trying for those best deals, but you can really do this for any show. Like basically any theater has a box office, there's people who work there, and you can just ring them when they open. Normally it's around 10 a.m. but you can check that on their website, and then you can ask, are there any returns for today? Do you have any deals? And sometimes you could just ask them, so if they offer you, for example, an £80 ticket, you're like, okay, I can't actually afford it. Is there anything cheaper? Or when is the best time to basically call or come to the theater to find something cheaper? They will be able to advise you depending on the day and just using their overall experience. So I think box office is definitely one of the most underrated methods, but I think it's probably the best because people who you are speaking to, they actually know ins and outs of when the tickets are available, when people return, and while sometimes this does depend on the day, they will be able to give you some advice on how to secure cheaper tickets. This is particularly good to check out if you are after securing a ticket for a sold out show. In those cases, it's probably not going to be the cheapest ticket, but it's a really good way if you want to see your favorite star and you just didn't get to secure a ticket. This is definitely worth trying. We'll go to the second part of the video where I'm going to talk about the cheap tickets which you can book in advance. So these are not on the day tickets, but these basically tickets are available as soon as the production puts them up for sale. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the preview tickets. Basically, preview performances are performances that happen before the official opening date. They're not any less polished or any less good, but they're just still basically work in progress. But when it comes to Western show work in progress, or like by the time they reach preview stage, this is already pretty much the final version that you're gonna see. And sometimes it's best to try and get the preview performance as close to the opening date as possible. But if that is not the case, you can just go for any preview performance, and in most cases you are able to find slightly cheaper tickets for these, because technically it could happen that basically the performance is stopped because a light is not working or there's like a malfunction on stage or something like that. But it's definitely worth trying to go for these tickets if you are on a budget. I managed to get £10 ticket for Young Vic performance, and also Old Vic has quite often £10 or £20 preview performance tickets, so it's totally worth trying for these. I think for bigger shows in West End, they're not necessarily much cheaper, but just generally being aware of preview performances, which are normally just when the production starts and for about 10 days up to 2 weeks. This is when you can really find those sweet deals. The second and the most obvious way to secure cheap tickets is to go for the cheapest tickets available on sale. Sometimes these tickets are between £25 to £40 depending on the production, and normally these seats are located at the very back of the balcony, back of the stalls, back of the grand circle, so they're like all the way at the back, really far away from the stage, and they're not necessarily restricted seats, they're just like really far away and you really feel like you're slightly removed from the action on stage. But they're not bad seats, especially if you're on a budget, they're definitely worth trying. But I guess the catch here is that oftentimes these tickets are actually sold out because a lot of people want to try and see production for as cheap as possible, and then they go for these cheap tickets. So if you can get ticket for £30, why would you pay £60? So you really need to be quick, and basically if you know that you're visiting London or that you want to see a particular show, then it's really important that you try and get those tickets as soon as possible, because otherwise they will be potentially sold out and you will be left only with the expensive tickets. One tip when it comes to booking these cheapest seats in the house is to check the size of the theater, because sometimes if a theater is small, cheapest tickets are not necessarily that bad. Even if you're completely on the side or all the way at the back, if the theater is small, you don't really feel that distance between the stage and your seat as much. Whereas like if the theater is really big, that's when you kind of feel like you're almost not in the room, you're so far removed and the actors are so small. So I think from that perspective, for the smaller theaters, these cheapest tickets are actually a decent deal, whereas like for the bigger theaters, it might be that you want to spend a little bit more money so you can enjoy the production a bit more. The third method for securing cheap tickets in advance is to go for restricted view seats. Basically, these are the seats that go on sale alongside all the other seats in the house, but it's important to spot them and then check how restricted the view is, because sometimes, even though they're marked restricted, they are not as restricted as they seem. Then there's this really good website called Seatplan where you can go and you can actually check the view from that seat, and then this way you can figure out if there is a rail or a pillar or whatever else might be in front of that seat and why it is marked restricted. Sometimes there is a really big obstruction which will actually prevent you to see the show, so I'm definitely not suggesting you go for these seats because then you will really not enjoy it. But in other instances, you might just have a slim pillar in front of you which is not necessarily really bothering you, or in some cases you basically have the upper balcony or something like that, slightly reducing the height of the stage, but that is not necessarily impacting the performance that much. So it's all about finding those restricted view seats that aren't as restricted and just paying slightly cheaper for basically a really good seat in the house. These are normally located on the sides of the stalls or somewhere in the middle, because in some cases the old theaters had those like pillars that are holding up balcony or something like that, and then this is kind of like obstructing your view slightly. And the fourth method that I want to talk about in this section is about concessions. Basically, a lot of the theaters offer discounted tickets for different groups of people. Sometimes it's people under 30, students over 60s. It could be that in your local area there is a discount for that particular theater. For example, I know that Almeida is offering, I think, even 50% off for students. Some other theaters are offering discounts based on like your postcode, etc. So I think it's always worth asking and trying, especially if you're in one of these groups that normally gets discounts somewhere. So the way to actually secure these tickets is to just ask either box office or see if on the website this is offered. If not, I think you can never go wrong with calling box office and asking if basically these types of seats are available and what are the prices. So this can just like offer you a straightaway discount. So just important to ask and then see what the box office says. All of these 9 methods I have tried in the past and succeeded to secure cheap tickets, and I've seen some of the most amazing shows, but there are 5 that I've seen in the past year that really stole my heart, and in this video I'm telling you which one those are, and you should check them out in 2025.